Coogs House. All right. Houston's got two different defensive linemen that could both be all Big 12 players by the end of the season. I need you to help me pick which one.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And if you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you enjoyed the conversation, but don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below if you're more of a wedding band person or a wedding DJ person. This gets a little feisty, so keep it PG down there, but thank you for telling us what you think and being involved in the conversation. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. More fun on that later. FanDuel is really having some great stuff going on this summer, so can't wait to tell you all about that throughout the episode. But we got a lot of stuff to talk about on the defensive line for Houston today. I think one of two guys is going to get to be all Big 12 kind of good. And I picked these two guys very specifically, frankly, because we're going to talk about how like the flexibility of a few other guys will really help these two. Talking about how there's one very important spot that we still don't know a whole lot about, and it's July 18th. But first, let's talk about the two guys I think that have a shot at all Big 12. That is Keith Cooper and AJ Anthony Holmes. I think that both of these guys as defensive linemen are all Big 12 types of talent. I wonder if based on the scheme, only one of them has a real shot at it, especially considering Houston is rebuilding and is heading in the right direction, but could hit some speed bumps with a very difficult schedule in doing that this year. I think they're going to surprise some people and win games people don't think they're supposed to. Again, that Oklahoma one is circled in red ink on the calendar in week 2. But on the whole, I could see, honestly, AJ and Keith kind of splitting a lot of votes, only one of them making it. Now, let's talk about the case for each one. Keith Cooper transfers in from Tulane. He had 10.5 sacks in his 37 games there. Started 13 games last year at defensive end. Appeared in 13 the year before defensive end. You remember both of those years, Tulane's defense was really good. They were one of the top-ranked teams in the country in a lot of different analytical categories. He did play 12 games the year before as a freshman as well. What I like about Keith Cooper is a couple of things. One, his size, 6'5", 280, great frame, athletic, strong, big but not over big, right? In the friendliest way possible. He's got great burst and good hands. And I think it's really interesting that, and we'll talk about this over the course of this, that in his moves and getting through gaps and twisting and stunting, he actually seems to accelerate as he progresses through the pass rush, which is a really, really elite kind of skill. You can't it's hard to really teach. You got to do some weight room work and work explosive things. It's a very natural. You can harness it once a guy's got it, but it's hard to teach. And he'll play a lot of defensive end, but at again 6'5", 280 in a pass rush situation, you can see him come in and play some 3 technique. AJ Holmes will be seeing some time at the defensive tackle spots, a lot more head up 4 to head up on a tackle, or a 3, which is in the B gap, depending on how Houston's shading around. He is a growing football player. He's a redshirt freshman last year, 2.5 sacks and 21 tackles. Really kind of came on as the year went on. 9 of his 21 tackles from the last 3 games of the season, right? Had the top freshman interior defensive lineman pass rush grade in America last year on Pro Football Focus. And that's very specific, obviously, but that's a lot of young football players and anyone in his positional group, right? The interior defensive lineman. For what it's worth, his pass rush grade is not based on how much you got to play. So other young defensive linemen, even if they played less, were in the same boat, even if they played more in the same boat, right? He had the top ranked score. Now, Houston's defensive line be kind of flexing out a lot of stuff, right? They're going to play 3 down linemen in Shieldwood's defense, as well as a literally being called dog. The position's a dog, right? And the dog is a flexibility kind of position. Think like what Nelson Caesar did last year in the defense, right? Where sometimes you're a defensive lineman, sometimes you're a linebacker, sometimes you're backed up almost covering a slot, sometimes you're coming off the edge in a 2-point stance, right? Sometimes you'll end up head up on a tackle, sometimes you're head up on a tight end, sometimes you're laying at 3 yards outside to pass rush. You're doing all kinds of. That's the dog position. The 3 defensive linemen are kind of toying with the rest of the offensive line, right? They may be in a 3 down traditional set where you have the nose tackle head up on the center and the other 2 head up on the tackles. They may be in more of a shift where the defensive tackle and nose tackle play more in the gaps, hoping to therefore give defensive end a little more of a one-on-one kind of look, right? If the nose tackle shitted into his place at A gap, that's going to pull the guard down. Guard and center have to double team the nose tackle. That gives a defensive end one-on-one with the tackle. You hope so, right? If not, then theoretically the guy playing in the gap now has like a door hinge in front of him as far as what the offensive line looks like, right? Cooper looks to play more of the end spot, and AJ looks to play more of the defensive tackle spot, both of which get a lot of one-on-one action when they go to more of a 4-down look in this defense, both of which will be featured in a lot of pass rushing situations, both of which could add up to, frankly, getting a lot of stats. If I were to pick right now, but I want you to tell me in the comments down below where you found this podcast, or find me on X at Painsworth512, what you think, who you think has a better shot here. My pick, I think, right now is Keith Cooper. First of all, love Keith's game at Tulane. Love the explosion, like I talked about. He's familiar with Shieldwood. He's a little bit older, played more football games at the college level. And yes, Tulane played in the group of 5, but they had some non-conference games against like the Ole Miss. So again, we saw them with the defensive line specifically with big stops and a gigantic safety to beat USC the year prior, right? He's involved in all of that as well. I think the thing that I like about him, though, you watch the spring game, is that he seems to be like the guy they dial up. And by that, I mean, in the spring game, they did anything complicated. They did just different tech stunts and twists and tech speed tackle and cross TEX, right? And different twisting kind of things amongst defensive linemen. Cooper was the featured rusher. They're trying to twist and screw up the offensive line to free him up to get to the quarterback a lot. They didn't do anything too complicated in the spring game, but he was always the guy in that first defensive line group getting the call, right? You're dialing something up for your guy. He was always the guy. That's indicative to me of, okay, Wood as the defensive play caller understands this talent and this Cooper guy. They get along. If so facto, that's the move, right? The plug for AJ Holmes is that, honestly, as far as sliding your pass protections and understanding what you're doing coming in and so on and so forth, Keith Cooper is going to get all the buzz. He's going to get everyone's going to know what he's doing. They're going to slide their offensive lines over and so on and so forth. AJ Holmes may have a statistically significantly better year, right? Because he's going to get the one-on-one situations and not the same attention that Keith Cooper has, right? The other thing is, frankly, that AJ Holmes, I don't mean to make it sound like a mystery box, but is a younger football player. Who knows how much development he's got? I know that he looks a lot better in the spring than he did in the football season. How much more has the guy worked on his craft in the last 3 months? How much has that clicked? I think he projects to a great football player. How fast does that happen? Right? Happens this fall. You got this 2-headed monster here, and then I don't know what's going to happen. Again, Houston's going to upset some folks this football season. It's going to happen. But if it happens because of the defensive line play, it's probably because AJ Holmes makes the leap, right? And that combination of things, Keith Cooper on the one side, AJ Holmes on the other, is a big deal, right? Now, they've got great talent behind them. Zyga Strong, Talik Robbins, a lot of great guys around them in their depth charts that are really going to help, frankly, play some of those, 2nd and 7 in the middle of the field kind of downs to get them a quick blow. So when they get, fresh for whatever's next or what, 3rd down, etc. But the real trick here is It may come down to the guy playing right next to them at the nose. I want to tell you why in a second. But first, I want to make sure you know that FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook for a reason. And because they pick these times in the summer, right? Where like you're watching WNBA, get into women's basketball, or you're watching baseball and trying to rekindle your love of baseball like we do every year about this time, or you got the Olympics coming up, or whatever you got going on, right? And FanDuel, all summer long, has boosts and bonus daily for all customers. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. The Astros are creeping up. I told you to follow this a few weeks ago. They're coming up on the Mariners. Get them while you can before they're just not good enough odds. They're just too obvious. They're going to win the whole AL West. Head to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer before it's over right now. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So I mentioned that Keith Cooper, AJ Holmes, I think are both going to have big years, right? I think they're both going to be really good football players. I don't know when it happens for AJ. I think it's going to happen at some point for AJ. It could happen this fall, could happen the next fall. He's a younger football player. I also think Keith Cooper is going to have a great season this year against Power 5 competition, right? But the real story may actually be the position in between them. That is the nose tackle. The nose tackle in this defense does a lot of different things, right? In this shifting defense, they got to be able to play head up on a center, take on a double team in a gap. They got to be able to twist and stunt like a defensive tackle. It takes a really diverse skill set that, frankly, is challenging, I think, in an underrated kind of way. The other thing I remember is Houston had great player at the nose tackle last year in Dozier Nwankwo. He transferred out in the coaching change. Best of luck to you. However, Houston's looking to improve and frankly do more challenging things. And I want to stress the guys they've got to replace him coming in might be as different as any two guys could be from Chidozie and Nwankwo as far as what they do well. Dot was a wrestler, a little undersized, great hands, great hips. The projected starting, he started in the spring game as well, nose tackle, Xavier Stillman is more of a bulldozer type, 6'3", 310 from Hutchinson Community College. Honestly, like a gigantic, like I was surprised it was only 310, kind of big, right? Just big, and frankly, really hard to block one-on-one because he is so big. I would argue in the spring game, Pancake, Demetrius Hunter, the center, had, has probably looked the best out of any offensive lineman, and he had trouble blocking Xavier Stillman one-on-one in one-on-one situations. He's really that daunting of a figure to go get, and he uses his size very well, right? He stalemate us in double team isn't really a win. He didn't slip through and break it, right? But he stalemated us in double teams, which in a number sense kind of is a win, right? They're taking 2 to block your 1, so that's good, right? Very different from nose tackle play we've seen the last 2 years, right? His backup, who may compete for some real minutes, some real snaps, I should say, Everett Rogers, 6'2", 300 pounds, Tulsa transfer. He's also a big, strong kid. He looks 6'2", 300. I'm telling you, Xavier Stillman looks closer to 6'3", 325. Like that's, I think, where the two look a little different. And honestly, similar skill set in a lot of ways. I might say that Everett Rogers, the projected backup, I think they'll both play a lot. He probably has a little bit better hands, whereas Stillman might have the better explosion or burst. Nose tackle is such a big a big cost on your body type of position. They'll probably split reps, I'd imagine. A lot of time between the two of them. Both of them, though, will have a big job with these two big talents in the starting group at the other two defensive line spots. And that's ultimately eat up blocks. And I know that's not a glorious or a glamorous job, right? But again, if it takes 2 offensive linemen to block Xavier Stillman, that's all of a sudden the other 3 guys have one-on-ones, right? That's how that goes, right? And if they pull in a tight end, then they're taking 6 guys to block 4 guys, maybe even 3 guys. The secondary has a lot of numbers in their favor all of a sudden, right? Like the numbers start working out when these guys force double teams, right? That's the name of the game for these nose tackles. And frankly, I think they both do it very, very well. What I'm intrigued by, and the same kind of youth thing that had me intrigued about AJ, right, at the defensive tackle spot, they're telling folks based on their depth charts and stuff like that, that Justin Benton, who was a freshman last year, I was really excited about, thought about transferring out of the coaching change. New coaching staff really worked hard to recruit him to stay. Georgia kid, 6'1", 300 pounds ish, but really like, frankly, very lean, 300 pounds, if I'm being really honest. Justin is projected to be in this nose tackle rotation. Now, he is a very aggressive football player, comes off the ball very, very well, burst, explosion, punch, etc. He was just a little undersized last year, right? True freshman. And if he can develop into, or has developed into, and is able to play his way into, etc., the same kind of rotation, where suddenly you have 3 nose tackles that can all occupy 2 guys, right? If he can really be in that rotation, then suddenly you're looking at a pretty strong defensive line room, right? We've had Sack Ave before. We understand pass rushing, and we've seen it come through Houston a lot. But this idea of some plugging type guys has kind of been up and down. It's not, Sack Ave is not based on plugging gaps, right? And so having a rotation of these nose tackles all of a sudden that changes that up would be a big deal. And I would argue if they can do that job, it really does allow for Cooper and Holmes, or Strong and Robbins, or Quindario Lee, Garfield Lawrence, these other guys playing the defensive tackle and in spots, can really get a lot of shine statistically for work being at least helped, if not done, by these guys at the nose tackle spot. It's just interesting to watch because both from a schematic standpoint and from a what they did in the spring game standpoint, just on the field, the individual talents, this is such a different way to play the nose tackle position than Houston had a year ago with Dot. Dot was a sack artist. He could get by, and he got by Cooper Beebe, right? Like he got by any offensive lineman on the other side of the ball, and that's a talent of itself. I would say it's a plus number when you get past a guy. They got double team for a whole different reason here, right? It's just interesting to see the way that this is transforming. This is almost more traditional. So Houston folks that have been, last year the trouble was a lot of the trench work, right? Like we're working on. I think there's some guys in, Keith Cooper was not here last year. Xavier Stillman, Everett Rogers was not here last year. Justin Benton was a freshman last year. AJ Holmes was a redshirt freshman last year. These guys are growing in front of our eyes, and I think that they're really ready for a lot of this. Now, we haven't talked about the real key to unlocking this whole thing, and that is the flexibility of this like weird quasi lineman position. And that may, just like the nose tackle opens up the guys around him, having people that can really play that flex spot allows for a lot of things to happen in the defense. So in talking about that, I think in talking about how this flex spot, they're calling the dog, opens up a lot of things for the defensive line. I think we need to remember that schematically, this guy is kind of a linebacker, maybe even a big box safety, definitely defensive lineman, definitely a guy has to cover some as well, though. Requires being a great athlete. And it looks like a position built for Brandon Mack. Now, Brandon Mack is probably a familiar name because Houston was really excited to get him to transfer a little over a year ago at this point from Ole Miss. Folks in Ole Miss, I talked to Stephen Willis, host of Locked On Ole Miss. They love Brandon Mack. I have nothing bad to say about him. They love Brandon. And it's always interesting to hear that from a guy that transferred out, right? Like you don't typically think from a high caliber recruit goes to Ole Miss and transfers out after a few years. You're like excited, like, oh, I hope he goes and kills it. I hope like they want him to do well. And I think that's because at Ole Miss, and then honestly, in last year at Houston, it's just been this roller coaster ride of injuries for Brandon. And I think this is a lot about him and his personality and his vibe, whatever, his play, that people want him to do well and see that there's a real chance that he does do very well here. And they also see that this guy can't stay healthy, has not been able to thus far, and they're hinging a lot on him at this flex spot being able to do that. Right? Now, I will say, video games, college football 25, turn the injuries off, Brandon Mack, great fit for this position. I understand why you build it around him, right? He is 6'3", 245, can cover the flat, can cover the hook curl, right? I understand how you'd want him to be the kind of guy that a quarterback is always checking, where do you line up this snap? Where is he right now? Got to go. I think he's wearing number 4 next year. Where's 4? Where's 4? Where's 4? Right? I understand why that you see Brandon Mack play and you're like, okay, this is what this guy is gonna do, right? Strong, quick, explosive, good hips, tracks the ball well for a defensive player, right? It's a little bit of a lot of things very well, right? The issue is if he's not on the field, you got this position that requires hyper athleticism. And you're like, okay, who's going to play it? I kind of think right now it looks like Nadami Tucker. Tucker's 6'3", 250. He, honestly, he played a lot of D-line last year, a little bit undersized for some of that. And, if he's worked on the coverage stuff in the year since, knowing that this may be his position, you got to imagine he's a lot better at it. We didn't see a whole lot of him doing it before, so don't have a whole lot of frame of reference of what he can and can't do at it. I do wonder, though, if this is almost a better spot for him because he was a little bit of an undersized guy with his hand in the dirt last year, right? Is this potentially well, it requires a crazy good athlete, and I think that Tucker is a good athlete. We haven't seen him do these great things. I'm not saying he can't. We haven't seen it, right? As an undersized guy, that certainly means they shouldn't have trouble in the pass coverage from a running and keeping up perspective. And can you cover the hook curl flat? Right. That's not a crazy daunting task if you know what you're doing. And I think the staff, Shieldwood's defense, I actually don't know if these guys are going to work with Giles or who they're going to work with on positionally, but I should probably know that. Come on, Ainsworth. Anyway, I think that there's reason to believe that just because he walks in the room and looks the part, that there's reason to believe that this guy could be that, right? And that may be the deal. I'm getting really fast. You can't tell I'm excited about the youth because the truth is that the guy this is built for is one of the most exciting freshman recruits we have coming, and that's Zion Taylor. Now, Taylor spent part of the spring with a boot on his foot or whatever, but 6'2", 220, local kid, originally commit under Dana Holgerson, but kept on with the new staff, and he's part of this whole. Hey, he and Mo, William, all these guys are saying, hey, listen, Houston kids, top Houston kids that play football, stay home, go to U of H. He's one of the high end or biggest voices in that, high end players at that, and it kind of feels like the position's built for him too. Now, true freshman, one of the most athletic positions on the field. Obviously that's stretching and a lot of different things that would have to happen just right. And it's not unheard of that a freshman comes in and makes it kind of an impact in the defensive front seven, but it's really, really hard. And Zion's really good. That's really, really hard to do. So that might not be a fair expectation for the fall of 2024. But as far as Sheil Wood, Willie Fritz, this staff and what they're building, I do kind of think it's a fair expectation of Zion's going to be that guy eventually. And I think that's exciting. I mentioned Zion that spot. AJ is a redshirt sophomore. Justin Benton's a sophomore, right? Actually, Benton might actually have the eligibility if he didn't play enough games last year. I have to go check that. I should know that. The youth in this group, while they're led by Keith Cooper, a veteran coming in from Tulane that understands the defense, understands the coaching staff, the youth in this group is strong, really strong. And, I mentioned at the top of the show that Houston will surprise people. Houston will win games the national media doesn't think they're going to win this year. Again, circle Oklahoma. But it is also a rebuilding process. The rebuilding process means you got to get guys off the bus that shouldn't be on it. You got to get guys on the bus that need to be on it. You got to get guys in the right seats, and then you got to go, right? There's somewhere in that first couple steps they're kind of getting the guys off the bus, getting new guys on the bus, etc., right? That doesn't mean that it won't be a fun season or anything like that, but watching these young guys play these roles, even if, a redshirt sophomore gets smoked because he's younger than the guy blocking him is by 3 years, right? We still got guys with COVID years playing football, guys 24, 25 playing college football, might even have 26. How old's Cam Rising? Right, the guys are older in college football this year than they've been in a long time, right? It could happen. But the way this thing is going, the talent at these young spots is really, really impressive and important. I think one of them is going to make all Big 12 this year. I really do. I think it's all going to come together. My pick is Keith. I'm picking Keith Cooper right now. You tell me in the comments below if you think I'm wrong. Think I got somebody else. I'm sure I left someone you're thinking of out. Go ahead and tell me that too. Bring it on. You can tell me each. You can tell me all you want to at Painsworth512 on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever your social media account of choice is. That's where you can find me and my things as well. Thank you for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day today. For a second listen, I know I've done it all week, but Drake Toll's talking a lot about the Big 12 and conference realignment and all the conference hubbub at the start of July and first half of July. So go check him out at Locked On Big 12. Dose Grande and the kind of things they're doing over there. Locked On Cougars is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. Is your team, our Houston Cougars, every day. Go Cougs.